Hi guys, it's Gabriel. So I'm going to be starting a new series on design patterns. So design patterns are standard solutions to common problems in software design. They provide a template for how to solve a problem in various situations. And we're going to be looking at some common design patterns in the software development industry. And I'm going to be focused on using Node.js and JavaScript for all of our design patterns right here. So design patterns are common general programming concepts. So it's not restricted to just JavaScript. It applies to other languages like C#, Golang, and the many other languages out there. Absolutely. We're going to be looking at various design patterns, and so for this video, we're going to be touching on the singleton pattern. So the singleton pattern is a commonly used design pattern, especially in scenarios where you need to ensure only one instance of your class is created. This particularly is useful for resources that are costly to create, such as database connections or configuration objects, or maybe when you're trying to make IO calls to external APIs and all of that. So you want to make them singleton because recreating those objects are very expensive. So the singleton pattern works best for those instances. The singleton pattern restricts the instantiation of a class to one single instance and provides a global point of access to that instance. This can help manage states in Node.js application. So what that actually implies is, with the singleton pattern, you're creating a single instance, just one instance of that object. So irrespective of where in the project you'll be using that object, you're going to instantiate it just once. So just once and you're good to go. So here are some key points. So single instance, the singleton pattern ensures that the class has only one instance. So when an object is initialized once, with the singleton pattern, you have only one instance of that object. Now, there's also the aspect of global access. The instance is globally accessible throughout the application. So when it is instantiated once, it is accessible in all parts of the application, whether your main.js file, in your database.js file, or whatever file, or whatever part of the project you'll be using it has a global access. Instantiate once and use throughout the lifetime of the application. And also, it is memory efficient, useful for managing resources that are expensive to create, as I said a while back, as it avoids repeated instantiation. So here are some benefits. It provides a controlled access point for a particular instance, so you know exactly where that instance was created when and where it was instantiated first. There's also the aspect of lazy instantiation. So the instance can be created only when it is needed. So if you're not going to use that object, you shouldn't initialize it or create it. So there is the lazy initialization. So if a certain condition does not pass, okay, don't initialize or create this object. So it helps manage reduce memory usage. So, but there are obviously, as it has its benefits, there are also some drawbacks. So some drawbacks include hidden dependencies. It can introduce hidden dependencies in your code base, making it harder to test and maintain. So you also have issues with concurrency, and we're going to be looking at an example, and I'm going to be showing you some of the concurrency issues and how to solve them. Some of the things we see when we use the singleton design pattern. In multi-threaded environments, especially, a special care must be taken to ensure thread safety. So if you're not very conversant with working in multi-threaded environments, you're going to get into issues with concurrency when you're working with the singleton design pattern. But I'm going to be showing you a solution that you can apply to solve such kind of instances. So there's also the global state management. So simplifies global state management by having a single instance. So these are just some of the drawbacks that the singleton design pattern has. So just with every pattern, design pattern, there's no silver bullet. It's not one pattern solves all. You just have to know at what level or what you're building and whether it fits your use case. So that's just it. So we're just going to get right into the code right about now. So first, I'm going to come here and open the terminal. So I'm going to initialize a Node.js project here. So I'm going to do that with the npm init-y command. So this will create a package.json for us. So you have a package.json, and yeah, this is good. So we're going to create, let's call it a database.js file. Yeah, so we're going to create that file, and we're going to create a database, a static database class. So we're going to call it class database. So this database is going to have a constructor. Now that constructor will say if this object, this database object, the instance of that object is null, what do? We're going to say this connection. So we are defining a property here, connection property. We say this connection is equal to this dot connects. So this is going to be a function, connect function. Yeah, so I want that function to also take in a property, or rather I'll call it a parameter. So I can say good. We'll come back to that. So if we've assigned our connection property this connects function, our connection property this connects function here, we can now say database the instance is equal to this. So what we are saying is whatever we've initialized here, let us assign it to the instance of this object here, the static instance of this object here. So this is where the singleton initialization is actually done on line 5 here. So I can come after here and just return the database instance. Then inside the class I can have a function. I can say our connect function that we have above. So it takes in a status, and I can say console.log. Let's use a string literal here. Say database connection is, enter the status. Yeah, that's good. So it just returns an empty object. Just that works. Perfect. So we're going to come outside the class and say constant, let's call this db1 is equal to new. So we're going to instantiate the database objects. So we've created a static, or rather a singleton database object. This is an object, a class object here. So we're going to create an instance of that object. So we're going to instantiate it here, database. Yes. So we're going to also do something. We're going to freeze this object. So we don't want it to change at, say, runtime when it's running. So we're going to say object.freeze. We're going to freeze this. Perfect. So what we're going to do now is we're going to export this module. Module.exports. Let me do this. I'll call this db1. Yeah, so that works. We can save this. Yeah, everything looks good. So let's come to the roots of our project here, and we're going to create another file. We're going to call it main.js, our main.js file. Okay, so inside our main.js file, we're going to import our implementation from the database.js here. So I'm going to say const, I'm going to destructure, call this db1, and say imports from, okay, do this, import from the database file. Yeah, so we're going to do that. So I can say let's call this instance1 be equal to db1 dot connects. So our connects can take in, let's call this fair, and say instance. I'm going to explain all of this. db1 dot connects. Let's call it bad. Then let's say, yeah, that's fine. Then I'm just going to console.log here and say to check if instance 1 is actually strict equality equal to instance 2. Yeah, beautiful. So let's just come to the terminal here, clear this. So what we're doing here is we're importing our database class, our implementation on the database class that we've done on our database.js file. Then we're saying, we're going to say, let's say it's a database object. We're initializing our database connection. And let's say we're in a multi-threaded environment where this thread creates an instance of the database class and wants to access, maybe perform a read operation, an update operation, or a delete operation on that particular database. And since it's a multi-threaded environment, another thread is spawned up that maybe the first thread is trying to read, the second thread is trying to update. Now, with that happening, this can cause a problem, a concurrency issue. So if anything changes on the database object, that is our database, our Singleton implementation on that database object, it's going to corrupt a lot of things and affect the record, affect the state of the database object we've created. So let me just run this. So we'll call it node main.js. Yeah, so you can see from our database.js here, it first, when this is checked, the connect, it runs here, say database connection is good, also comes here, it picks this, fair, so you can see at different instance of this database object, it gives records. So let's say this is a select state, this for select, this for update, this for read. So maybe you're updating here and you're reading here, and you can see that there's a lot of disparity here. And if you check the strict equality for the instance 1 and the instance 2, you see they are false, they are not the same. Same instance but not the same. So this can cause a lot of issues. So this is not thread safe. So how do we ensure thread safety? So let's come back to our database.js here, and let me come here. Let's have another class here. Let's say class, let's call this async database. It looks like our database, everything looks like our database. So let's just say constructor here, and we say if the database, the async database, the instance is empty, set this connection property to the function on this object. Exactly. So let's say our constructor takes in a status here, a status property parameter. So we apply the status here also. We can now create a Singleton instance. Let's call this async database dot instance is a Singleton instance. So we've initialized, or rather we've assigned the connection function to this property here. So we are saying this property that we've initialized here, assign it to the instance of this static object. So after we do that, we can say return async database.instance. Beautiful. So let's also come here and create an async function. So let's call it, we have a status param here. So we can just console.log, use a string literal and say database connection is status here, and let's just return an empty object. Okay, that works. Now we could see in our first example that it wasn't thread safe, because in a multi-threaded environment you'll be spawning different database connection, and that's not what we want. We want a single connection, and to help us achieve that, we're going to be using a package, a mutex package. It's called mutual exclusion. So with that package, we'll be able to achieve thread safety. So we're going to install that package, npm install async mutex. So it's an asynchronous mutual exclusion package. So we install that quickly. Yeah, so that's good. So we can come up here and just import that package. We can call that const. We want to get the mutex require from the async mutex package. Yeah, so we can come here. So we're going to create a mutex for safety purposes. So say mutex to ensure thread safety. So we say a Singleton mutex So we're going to initialize a new text object from our package. So I'm going to say async function. Let's call this db2 because we already have a db1. So we'll have a status here, and inside here we're going to say await singleton new text dot run exclusive. Then we're going to have an async function inside here. So this is going to be an anonymous async function that has an object where we can, if the async database dot instance is empty, then what do we want to do? We want to set the instance of this database, async database, to a new async database. Now, what does this mean? What we mean here, what this will do for us here is, if two threads are trying to create different instance of this async database object, if it checks that the first instance has been created and it is still running, and if the async database has been instantiated once, it stops any other thread trying to instantiate a new instance of this async database object here. So we're going to see that in an example, so we can get that clearly. So we can just return our async database instance. So return the first instance that was created. So even if 500 or 20 threads are trying to create or instantiate more than once a single instance of this object has been instantiated, it will stop, this function here will stop every other thread trying to instantiate new instance of this object here. So we're going to export this here too. So we're going to call it db2. Then we're going to save, come back to our main.js here, and then we're going to have another from our export here. So I'm going to wrap this in an async function. Say async function. Let's just call it init or initialize. Beautiful. So we're going to have another instance. So db3, or let's call that instance 3, is equal to await db2. Then we're going to pass in words. Let's see, pass in bad. Let's say we have another instance 4. Let's say we're going to pass in await db2, passing good. Then we can check if they are equal. Log, yeah, beautiful. So let's save this and let's run. Okay. Oh yeah, we've not called this here. So when we initialize, save. Now there's something I want you to notice here. You see, we created the first instance of this db2 implementation, which is the async database class. We can see that the moment this first instance is initialized here, it does away with the second one. So even if we have, let's instance 5, let's call that bad, and we run again, it's still the same thing. Even if we have 20 instances here, provided the first instance of the async database class has been initialized, the other instances are done away with. So you won't have the issue with concurrency. So you need to know exactly when and where to use design patterns, what use cases suit what you're building or your logic. So you need to determine all of that before implementing a design pattern. So it's been an exciting experience walking you through all of this, and love to hear from you in the comments about this Singleton design pattern. Is there anything I missed out or anything you want to see? I'll be glad to take them in the comment section. And this is going to be a very beautiful series, and we're going to be continuing with other design patterns. So that'll be all for now. Bye and see you soon.